Hi, everyone. We are here today with another webcast of Lavita AI's Health Innovators series. We are honored to have Dr. Jay Galson, VP of Technology of Alchemab Therapeutics, a frontier company at the forefront of using AI for drug development. This conversation is going to be very exciting, talking about all the recent technologies, specifically with generative AI emergence. Applications in drug design and development. We're so honored to have you here today, Dr. Galson, and with your background, of course, PhD medical sciences from Oxford University, and in the last several years at Alchemab Therapeutics. Our audience would love to hear your thoughts and your insights into the topic. So without further ado, would love to have maybe a quick introduction and background on your side, and then we'll dive into some of the discussion points for today.
Thanks, Ali. It's great to join you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. So perhaps to kind of give a bit more color as to how I ended up where I am now. So my PhD, as you mentioned, was in medical sciences at the Oxford Vaccine Group, and what I was doing there was looking at the antibody repertoire after vaccination. So looking at all the antibodies we produce after you're given a vaccine and trying to understand how that relates to how well that vaccine is working. And this was a really great time because it's when really high throughput sequencing technologies were emerging, and it was possible to really look at these antibody repertoires at a depth that was kind of getting to their true diversity, which is absolutely enormous. And this gave us some really fascinating immunological insights into the vaccination. But what really emerged as the big challenge was, how do you identify the specific antibodies responding to vaccination from the huge diversity of all the antibodies you have in circulation? So from the millions of antibodies you perhaps get from a blood draw, what are the fraction of a percent of those that are the ones of interest? So I therefore ended up spending quite a lot of my time on developing methods, so computational and machine learning methods, to try and isolate these antibodies of interest. And as I was coming to the end of my PhD, I was thinking a lot about this, and it became very apparent to me that these kind of methods could be really transformative for antibody discovery as well. And this is kind of what led me onto the career path that I have. And I worked for a while developing technologies to improve the antibody drug discovery process, and I think we made a lot of good advances and kind of demonstrated the positive impact that these computational and machine learning methods can have. And it's great to see now that these have kind of become kind of quite a well-established field. It was about actually nearly 6 years ago, that I joined Alchemab, and we met shortly thereafter. And I joined Alchemab just as the company was forming. And what really inspired me to join Alchemab was the potential to develop really quite a radically different approach to drug discovery, and an approach that could really tackle one of the big problems that the industry was facing, which was a lack of novel drug targets. So to provide some context to what we're doing at Alchemab, and this screenshot of our website, I think, kind of illustrates it quite nicely. What we do is to look for individuals who are extremely resilient to disease. And just to give an example of what that could mean, it's maybe someone who has, say, genetic susceptibility to a disease, like, say, genetic susceptibility to Alzheimer's, but they don't get it. So there's something going on that is giving them protection despite their predisposition to that disease. And our idea is that the reason these people are protected is because they're naturally producing autoantibodies that are giving them that protection. So what we want to do is find those people, so find those very rare people who display this incredible disease resilience. We then sequence their antibodies really deeply, ultimately to kind of find those antibodies associated with disease resilience. And then we discover what those antibodies are doing. So the nice element about the approach is because we're starting with the antibodies, it's totally target agnostic. So we sequence the antibodies, find the protective antibodies, and then find out what those antibodies are actually doing. And this means we're discovering some really, really novel drug targets. The challenge for this approach, again, kind of comes back down to the challenge that I had during my PhD, which is how do you identify those relevant antibodies from these really large data sets? And for us at Alchemab, this is where AI comes in. So we've developed what we call the search engine for the immune system. And this is effectively a suite of AI models that are able to comprehend the vast diversity of antibodies that we are sequencing. And we can apply to searching for antibodies that have that association with disease resilience and have those desired drug-like properties.
Amazing, amazing. I think what is interesting actually about this platform, which is very exciting, is how it brings the kind of the findings or what you said from those rare individuals because of their genetic background, they have resilience to a specific disease, and then be able to use that specific case, which is very rare, and then bring that benefit to the broader patient population by identifying those specific antibodies. So, as a way of background, of course, Lavita AI is also really about personalized health and the ability, of course, for one person's resilience to a specific condition maybe benefit others. And if that specific person, of course, in participating as part of the studies or somehow I identified and kind of connected with Alchemab or other companies similar to Alchemab, it's amazing that that benefit that comes from one individual, but then bringing all of that medical benefit to the broader population. Very exciting topic for our audience, I'm sure. I actually put this page, I talked with you, Jake, earlier. The broader scientific community, of course, has greatly acknowledged the importance of computation and AI in biology and specifically in drug design. So 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry went to a group of researchers who were working on predicting the structure of protein and being able to design proteins that behave in certain way. And they've been using, of course, computational and AI methods for that. Famously, the AlphaFold effort group at Google, for a long time, they essentially, through a very amazing computational approach, have solved this problem. And now we're seeing that technology is being used broadly by all the biotech and pharma companies and researchers around the globe. And of course, that was acknowledged in the Nobel Prize that was awarded to them. So a very interesting area. So where do you see, Jake, kind of the impact of AI? You talked about it a little bit in the context of Alchemab. Where do you see kind of for the next 5, 10 years that impact is making place? And then at the same time, I think there's going to be some hype period. Of course, Gen AI in general has brought the AI to the broader attention of the public, but there's still going to be challenges and bottlenecks and areas where still more work is needed. So in this page, kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4 different steps of drug discovery and development process. Of course, finding the pathway of the disease. This is essentially identifying those targets and then be able to design new molecules or antibodies that are going to target those proteins as a way of essentially improving the health outcomes. And then at the time of actually making those drugs, you still have to manufacture them. And then we still have to go through the clinical trials to make sure that they are safe and efficacious for the broader population. So along these kind of areas, where do you see that most impact has been taking place, that you're seeing in the next several years will take place? And where still is going to be the bottlenecks for drug development that still more work is needed?
Yeah, a big question. Right now, I think it's all about improving the efficiency of the process, so enabling us to develop drugs faster, and faster also kind of means more cheaply. And if you look at these 4 different stages, so you find the target, then you find the drug against the target, then you actually have to do all the testing of that drug, scale it up for manufacture, and then put it into the clinic. AI is really influencing every one of these stages, albeit in slightly different ways. It's effectively kind of helping us generate hypotheses, prioritize experiments, and make good decisions. But I think the almost like the holy grail that a lot of people think about when talking about Gen AI for drug discovery is that box two, I think. So effectively generative design of new drugs. So can you use AI to generate a truly novel drug from scratch based on, say, like a desired target or a desired activity? And I think for small molecules, this is actually starting to get reasonably well established. For antibodies, which is what I'm more familiar with, it's I think a much harder problem, and it's probably a harder problem because the design space for antibodies is much bigger because they're much bigger molecules. And if I'd spoken to you a year ago, I probably would have been very skeptical that Gen AI for kind of de novo design of antibodies was possible. But I would say I'm starting to change my mind on this, and the field is moving so fast. Even in the last couple of months, there have been a few really interesting white papers released. So Chai Labs, Nabla Bio, Latent Labs have all released some data showing that actually they're making really good progress against this. And it's perhaps still not better than conventional methods, actually, but I think what's really notable is the rate of progress. The rate of progress here is just kind of, it's phenomenal. And it's that rate of progress that makes me think we're going to get there. And when we get there, it is going to really speed things up significantly. But perhaps if I kind of look further ahead or think about it differently, like, yes, Gen AI is great at making things faster and cheaper, but what excites me more than the efficiency gains is the possibility that it has to kind of enable entirely new ideas and entirely new types of drugs potentially that weren't really possible before. And this is again, this is kind of what resonates at Alchemab because AI has enabled us to do something fundamentally quite different, which is then helping us to find very different drug targets and treat diseases that were previously not possible to treat.
Amazing. We will put Jake the links to the papers, and I think there's some interesting conferences in the description of the cast. So for people that are interested to follow up, but it's exciting to see the pace of also the development and the advancement. Like you said, even maybe a year ago, this may have seemed a long shot, but now, excuse me,
Yeah.
in the last year, advancements have been made, and then kind of looking ahead in the next several years, the impact that it can make. I'm also curious to know your thoughts about how much AI is going actually to make an impact when it comes to actual clinical trials. That's one area that I apologize. That's one area that actually Lavita AI audience have been quite excited about when it comes to, especially with kind of data privacy related to medical data and health data, but then still enabling people to be able to participate in broader studies, broader research programs, et cetera, that enable scientists and drug developers to essentially take advantage of the broader patient population that's out there. Specifically, like you said, in case of Alchemab, there are individuals that may have resilience against some diseases, or maybe there are individuals that are willing to participate in clinical trials because of the specific health backgrounds and so on, but they don't know necessarily where to start or where that matching exists to those right programs. So where do you see actually, when it comes to the personalized medicine aspects of it, that AI is making a difference in connecting people, whether the right population, maybe the people with the right genetic background, maybe people that want to contribute to certain area with those right research programs? Is that area that you see also is kind of improving in terms of either efficiency or just broadly speaking, the way it's done, that AI is making an impact?
Yeah, that's a good question because I spoke a lot about two because that's where a lot of the excitement is. So the generative design of drugs, but ultimately the part that takes the longest and the part where failure is most impactful is in that box 4 that's in the clinical trials. And ultimately, only when you design only when you put a drug in the clinic do you know if it's really working. And if we can improve these trials, that will be enormously impactful. And I think it's not just AI here. It's kind of, it's like you said, it's a combination of AI with our kind of ability to increasingly generate more and more data from individuals. And this is like omics data, electronic healthcare records, and maybe even increasingly from wearable devices like watches. And then you've got that kind of coupled with all of these at-home tests that are starting to kick off. So it's becoming really accessible for people to generate a lot of data about themselves. So this means we've got a lot of, we've got a big volume of data, we've got diverse data, we're starting to get more longitudinal data, and this is exactly the kind of data set that AI excels at kind of making sense of and seeing patterns in and being able to stratify patients. So I think this is a really exciting area, but it's a really hard one because it's hard to kind of make practical use of these data for a whole host of reasons. And perhaps Lavita, or hopefully Lavita AI can help there. And if I kind of maybe get a bit more specific and think about where I'm seeing progress today, and we maybe talk about like how patient stratification works now for clinical trials, or it largely works now. It's kind of based on trying to find single biomarkers almost to predict whether a drug is going to work in your population. But there's a lot of instances where we haven't been able to find good single biomarkers to predict whether a drug is going to work in a patient population. And you can take, say, immune checkpoint inhibitors in cancer as an example. We're not great, or we haven't really found good single biomarkers to determine whether an immune checkpoint inhibitor is going to work in a particular individual. But actually, there's a lot of publications now coming out that are using AI models that are trained on various omics data, genomics, immune features, clinical data from these individuals that are actually doing a much better job of beginning to stratify whether an individual is going to respond to an immune checkpoint inhibitor. So there's definitely potential. We just need to realize that potential, and it's going to be a shift for a lot of people, I think, to enable us to realize that potential. So it might be a little bit more gradual, perhaps.
Exactly. No, I think you exactly hit it in the head with that comment. It's going to be empowered by individuals. And companies like Lavita, of course, our effort has all been to enable individuals to be able to, whether it's electronic health records, whether there's other type of personalized medical data or health data, to be able to gather those from wearables, etc. We have some exciting updates and releases on our product coming up around those, and then be able to securely share those with the right audience, whether it's researchers or other audience that you want to share, so that you're able to participate. And I think that's still kind of going to be remaining an important bottleneck in the industry today. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that the new drugs are safe and efficacious for the broader population. And that just means that we need more and more data. And of course, with, like you said, the breadth of the data that individuals can provide nowadays with EHR and with the wearable devices and all these things, it's going to be very, very important to harness that data. Of course, it takes a lot of time and effort, and hopefully Lavita AI will be part of that journey. One thing I wanted to bring up for our audience, maybe as the last topic, as we wrap up. So definitely it's been a very cyclical, as probably a lot of areas has been in terms of the innovation. So we see kind of times that, and this picture shows the investments, that this is specifically venture capital investments in AI related drug discovery, the startups. There was definitely a period of rise and hype going to the pandemic and a correction after that, but then with the kind of the chat GPT moment, and then realizing the impact of generative AI, as you mentioned, in the novel drug design and so on. Now we see a lot more investments coming to this space. So we're really hoping, of course, this cyclicality is part of the reality of how just the innovation economy works. But now, with all these kind of realized benefits and gain that are actually taking place, hopefully there will be even increasingly more attention and investments in these areas. And then, of course, Alchemab, going back to your introduction, as where you're working and currently bringing a lot of these advancements to the market, hopefully, is going to be a very important part of that. So any thoughts, and maybe one last thoughts about kind of this venture area or venture capital investments in this area, or if you want to kind of get involved, where do you see still opportunity is? And with that, I think we can wrap up the conversation.
Yeah, good question. I think there's still a lot of opportunity. We're not going to solve drug discovery or solve disease kind of in a very short time scale, and it's going to require AI working across a lot of different areas. So I think there's huge scope for innovation, and a lot of potential for the future. It's an exciting time to be in the industry.
Exactly. Fantastic conversation, Jake. This was wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for your insights. As mentioned to the audience, we put some links in the description of the podcast for folks that are more interested to dive a little bit deeper in these areas, some of the papers and the conferences. But this was an exciting conversation. Thank you, Jake, and hopefully we'll see you in future casts. And thank you for your great work in this space, and we wish you the best.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you. Bye.